Hey, what's up? It's John from the YouTube channel Pro Craps. Back in 2021, we did a 24-hour telethon to raise funds for the National Council on Problem Gambling. In fact, we raised over $6,000 to raise awareness and provide resources for those with gambling problems. As part of the telethon, we interviewed over 20 of the biggest names in gambling to get their perspective on gambling issues, gambling problems, their experiences, and of course have a little bit of fun with them. I was lucky enough to get the chance to talk to Michael Shackleford as part of this. Yes, the one and only Wizard of Odds. He's a mathematician, he's a guru, and he's a great guy to talk to. What fun, what a blessing to be able to talk to Michael. Check this out. Recording. We're going to get into, I'm going to ask him some dice control questions. I want to talk about bankroll management. A lot of people want to know the way that somebody who plays the math way plays. And I think there's a lot of interesting things here. So definitely, if you have got questions, drop them in the chat, put a big letter Q in front of it so I can find them easier, and then we can roll those in. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring Michael in now. We got take me a second here to get the cameras hooked up and the titles changed. So let's bring Michael in. Let's see, there's Wizard of Oz. We're going to change this to, whoops, the Wizard. How you doing?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. That's great. Great audio. Pleasure to meet you.
Well, great to meet you too, John. I see you're now 13 hours into your marathon. How you feeling?
I'm feeling really good, actually.
You said, go ahead.
No, I say I don't sleep much anyway, so it's probably okay.
Yeah, you said it's daylight on the East Coast. It also is on the West Coast. I'll show you out my window.
Oh, it is. You know what? I don't have my windows open.
There you go.
That's awesome. Yeah, so I got so many things to talk to you about, which is great. I don't even know where to start, but I think I'm going to start with the subject matter of the day, which is we're doing this Craps-a-Thon here for addiction, for gambling addiction. And a lot of our focus has been on money management, discipline, that sort of thing. And you've been at this a long time. So I'd love to get your thoughts, stories, just your personal thoughts on those subjects. And it's the subject of gambling addiction in general, because I'm sure you've experienced or seen some things that you could probably share with us.
Yeah. Thanks again for having me. We have a whole hour, so we can speak in depth about things, right? Sure. Okay. I do have to say that I'm mainly a math guy. I don't claim to be an expert on gambling addiction, although it seems to come up a lot, and I will talk about it if it gets addressed. What can I say? I'm not even sure where to start with that. I do think that Vegas is full of compulsive gamblers. I think that you can go to any sports book or a lot of the local casinos and see the same faces there all day long. And I tend to think a lot of these people kind of have it controlled, where they budget themselves to, at least be able to survive and eat. This might be a little controversial, but I've always said that if you are a compulsive gambler, try to quit. But if you can't quit, at least make good bets and keep it in moderation. Much like I might say to a compulsive smoker or compulsive drinker, if you can't quit, just at least keep it in moderation.
What's a good bet then in that case? Where do you even advise somebody to go if you had a chance to be one-on-one with somebody?
I don't really, I wouldn't, no one has ever even asked me, where should I go with a problem for compulsive gambling? I suppose I would just throw a Gamblers Anonymous. But I don't know. No one's ever asked me before.
No, I'm talking about the bets. You say if you can't get it under control, at least make a smart bet.
Oh, right.
So where do you advise them to go for what's a smart bet look like?
Well, I've realized that people like what they like in terms of games. And I have been trying to convert slot players to video poker for 24 years. And I don't know if I've made a single convert.
Really?
Because slot players are just slot players. So I try to at least keep people focused on the game that they like. For example, if it's a sports bettor, I would say just make straight up bets either against the spread, the total, or money line.
Mhm.
Forget all the cards, forget the exotic bets. All that stuff carries a much higher house advantage. And and again, just bet in moderation. If it's anything, I would say bet in moderation. I think video poker is especially addictive. So there, I would say look for the games with the good pay tables, then
Mhm.
play them properly, and again, bet in moderation.
What is it about video poker versus regular slots? I mean, aren't it's a random number generator no matter what.
Hmm.
Does your decision actually make a difference in video poker, or is it just an illusion that it's making a difference?
Oh, absolutely. The way it's dealt in Nevada and in almost every place in the U.S., you do control your own destiny in terms of the cards you get on the draw. For example, the cards that you get on the deal are five random cards from the 52. And you might ask, how do they determine what are the five cards? The deck is constantly being shuffled thousands of times a second. And at that moment, you make your bet and press deal, you get the first five cards in the deck. And then while the game is waiting for you to make a decision on the draw, it's constantly shuffling the other 47 cards. And then when you press draw, let's say you get rid of three cards, it gives you the next three. So,
Mm.
yeah, so video poker absolutely is fair and has the same odds as if a human being were dealing. Now, there are exceptions in some states that are pull tab states, and it's there your outcome is predestined. For
That's
example,
our
if
state is like
you
that. Yeah.
yeah, so but yeah, here in Las Vegas, there is a state law that any visual representation of cards or dice must follow the natural odds as if a human being were playing dealing it with fair equipment.
See, I had heard, I don't know if this is true or not. Maybe I've written a book. This is going back a lot of years, but in Atlantic City, at least, they used to say the video poker, they would deal 10 cards. You would get the five and the five cards behind them, and they would
Hmm.
just reveal what was already there. So the RNG gave you the 10 cards that was going to be it. Like it predetermined your win or loss because it figures you're
Hmm.
going to, you know, hold the two kings and, the rest are going to be garbage. And it would predetermine based on probability what you're going to play. Maybe it's
Well,
changed now.
okay, I will say that if the game dealt 10 cards and said, here's five random cards for what you get, and then here's five cards underneath each one
Mm-hmm.
that is what you're going to get if you throw it away, the odds would be exactly the same as long as it was all random.
Right.
And I'm not saying that nobody does it that way, but to the player, it shouldn't matter. A random card is a random card, but the way they design these games is they like the outcome to not be predestined. The game is more secure is if the actual outcome is decided at the very last possible second. It makes
Interesting.
it more difficult to hack and things like that.
Sure. What do you think of these people who say, and I literally watched a video today. I shouldn't say this. I watched it in the car, but I did. I had it on in the car while I was driving. Of a guy had to win at slots every time, kind of thing. And his yeah, right. And I'm like, is there actually a slot strategy? And his strategy was basically like wait for the bonus thing and do something special with like check out the bonus money or something every time. Is there a way to win at slots, or is it literally just when you happen to show up?
Okay, I could talk about this a long time, but in general, with most slot machines are not beatable. The odds, I would say, much like in craps, are the same every single spin. So there's no strategy like wait for a bonus and then quit or anything like that. However, there are advantage plays in particular slot machines, and one could talk about this for a long time. For example, games like Ocean Magic and Golden Egypt. These I call variable state games, where one spin or one game affects the next game. For example, you might win. There might be wilds on the screen that are going to stay there for the next spin. So if the last player to play it abandoned it with wilds, especially on the
Mm,
left side of the screen, a vulture, as they're called, can swoop in, play off those wilds, and then leave
mm,
when they're gone. and there are a lot of slot machine advantage players out there. I think it's one of the biggest advantage plays out there right now.
Really.
So some people are not going to appreciate me saying that, but it's true.
Hmm. No, yeah, and one of our uh, subscriber listeners here just wrote in slot vulturing as you said that, which is I've never heard the term before. I don't play slots.
Hmm.
My wife is a
Yeah,
huge slot player. She loves the video poker. That's her thing. Is the old fashioned one, the Game Kings, the original video poker. She hunts those things down like the 5 machines that are in our whole state. She knows where they are.
yeah. She may not be happy to know that the casinos are gradually getting rid of their game kings because they're
Mm.
not compatible with cashless gaming
Oh,
and new changes in technology. So that's why we're seeing less and less of those.
yeah, that's her. Always been her game. That one and the Joker's Wild Double Down, whatever the double win thing. That was her thing for years and years and years. She played that. Here comes the
Hmm.
porn folks again. Looks like, jeez, drives me crazy. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. And you heard me talking with Joe about trends. I know that you said this in your email to me. Um, I want to talk about trends a little bit because you're going to be able to correct me on this. And
Hmm.
I did a series, and I'm still in the middle of a series on dice control, and we'll weave into that a little bit too. And what I did is I ran a lot, thousands and thousands of rolls in win craps, and I showed the graph. I'm like, here's the graph, and I thinned the graph out over a billion rolls, and it's flat line. That's how the casino. That's the house edge, right? It's a flat line to the casino. They're siphoning off a little bit, but when you zoom in, you get these huge peaks, 20 wins in a row, 10 losses in a row. And I'm like, we experience the house edge, but in small chunks. And it's usually like this big spikes. And I'm always saying you're going to catch a good or bad trend because you're in there for the micro time, not the macro time like the casino is. And I try and catch that. You said in your email to me, let's talk about trends because you don't necessarily believe that there are trends, or how do you view that?
I will say that it's to be expected mathematically that in the short run, you do see a number of wins in a row and a number of losses in a row, and then maybe a choppy period in a row. Again, that's perfectly mathematically explainable, but you can
Mm-hmm.
never look at the past and say, here's
Right.
what's likely to happen next. Things could change at any time. The dice do not have a memory. So I absolutely do not believe that following trends helps you.
Okay. Um, Not following, hoping to catch is that's why I describe it as hoping to catch. Like if I see two in a row, I'm hoping that might be the start of something. And I'm hoping that I can catch the budding of a wave. It's not
Hmm.
a thing you could actually like document, but
Well,
I hope for it. You know what I'm saying?
okay. If that makes the game more fun for you or for anybody else, by all means, have at it. I mean,
Mhm.
gambling is supposed to be for fun, and I don't want
Truth.
to, I don't want to not make it fun for anybody. But you should be able to document if whatever you're doing is working for you.
Hmm.
So I mean, just write down rolls, write down your bets, and say and see how something is doing over a long period of time. And I think you will see that if you make the same kind of bets, that over the long run, you see the same house advantage no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, the House Advantage will for sure grab you. There's so many questions coming in. My goodness. Um, Quick shift of gears. So I have to ask because I see 3 people asking the same question. This is about blackjack, actually. Um, Blackjack automatic card shufflers. How did they change the game? Like in terms of the math of it? Because I made this
Hmm.
point earlier where if you're a card counter, and my parents were huge blackjack players, they don't play anymore because of the card shufflers because they feel like the shoe was the shoe, and my dad never counted cards, but he thought the shoe would get thicker towards the end, and he
Hmm.
just kind of feeling about the shoe, and they felt like basic strategy was designed to kind of work the shoe. And there's no more shoe. Does that, in your mind, change the math?
Well, the basic strategy is the same regardless of if the game is hand dealt with a continuous shuffler, or dealt with an automatic shuffler. And I will say, though, that the odds are slightly better with a continuous shuffler than with an automatic shuffler or a hand shuffler. And this is a little bit difficult to explain why,
Hmm.
but it's extremely small. It's kind of significant in a single deck game, but in a six deck game, it's off the top of my head, it's like 0.003% better to have a continuous shuffler.
Really? That's interesting. I would have thought the
Right.
exact opposite of that.
Well, I mean, this is difficult to explain, but when you have a cut card game, when you hit that cut card, the dealer is still going to finish that hand. And if that cut card happens to be in a clump of small cards, then you're going to have a lot of these small cards coming out the rest of that last hand, and it's going to kind of, you're going to see a lot of these small cards. But if that cut card is in a clump of big cards, then bam, 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 there's going to be a lot of big cards coming out, and people are not going to be hitting a lot. So you're going to enjoy those big cards for less time. And of course, it could be choppy too.
Sure.
But this is the best way I can think to explain it. But simulations, which I've done and other blackjack experts have done, absolutely confirm what's called the cut card effect.
That's interesting. I've actually never heard of that before.
Right.
It's interesting.
Right. But this is not something that I tell players to go out and chase because it's such a small thing.
Yeah, we said 0.006. So you said it was.
Yes,
That's
I
like
think I've said 003, but on my
yeah.
website, I have a page called the cut card effect, and this endeavors to
Mhm.
explain it in depth.
Yeah, that's like one card out of 100. I mean, that's ridiculous. It's zero change,
Yeah, but I
essentially.
will
Yeah,
say that for card counters, continuous shufflers are absolutely terrible. They kill the game.
right. And that's only for betting purposes, right? Like this, just you said
Right.
the strategy itself. The card counters don't necessarily change their basic strategy. They're just what they're going in with. So,
Right. It's they well, card counters will vary their strategy according to the count, no
mm,
matter what type of shuffle it is. But for the basic strategy player, just stick with the basic strategy and don't care how the game is shuffled. Except I like to advocate a hand shuffled game because it slows down the hands per hour, and you're being grinded down by that house edge for less time per hour. And I also think it's a nice break in the game. It's a nice chance to chat, and it's kind of like
mm-hmm.
um, halftime watching football. I think it's a nice break to the game.
Interesting. I got a question here from Brian in Hawaii Craps Shooters. He wants me to ask you if you were to play 5 days of craps, what would be the best
Mhm.
single bet for a player in terms of house edge?
The best single bet would be if you had a gun to your head and could only bet one thing, then it would be the don't pass. Now, I would rather bet the don't pass and then lay the odds, but you said just
Mm,
one bet.
right. So if you're playing for 5 straight days, you're just going straight up don't. Now everybody in my chat is loving that. I can tell you that right now. It's funny, the YouTube craps folks, for the most part, are don't players.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
they're right. The odds are better on the don't pass than the
Mm.
pass by 0.01%.
It's small difference, but I think what I like about it is the payout, man. I love the 1-to-1 payout when you have the hammer, which you never get that. I mean, you got to beat the come out obviously, but once you have it set, that's the best deal in the casino.
Right. I mean, an extremely small difference. So
Mhm.
I am not out there preaching bet the don't because again, it's so small, and I think a lot of players just find it more fun to bet with the table. You get more of that contact high, and you
Mhm.
feel that energy more. So they're however you like to play, whichever side. That's what I would recommend. But for mathematical players who you got to go with the don't.
Right. I was figuring you were going to say that, but that was my next question was as a mathematical player, what would you do at the casino? And you're more of a don't.
Yeah, if I were playing craps, I would most likely be betting the don't. I would make a don't pass bet, lay the odds, and then I would probably make some don't come bets and lay the odds on those too. How
Hmm.
many? It doesn't really matter. It might be depending, how what my mood is.
Right.
How much do I want to bet right now? And however, I will say that if I am, say, going to a casino with a friend and he likes to bet the pass, I will probably bet that way too, just so that we're not rooting against each other. And, I think it'll be more fun for him if we're both happy at the same time.
Sure. Well, that makes total sense. And that's a groove play, right? That's what you do when you're playing with friends. I like that a lot.
Mhm.
So you said if I play craps, that's what I would do. Do you play craps?
I really don't play that much. To be
Mhm.
perfectly honest with you, I really don't gamble that much anymore. I've been living in Vegas since 2001, and gambling gets kind of old, and I'm into other hobbies. And
Mhm.
certainly if I see an advantage play out there, and it's a good one, I'll definitely be all over that. But my name has been passed around town as an advantage player, so I
Mm.
don't. At most places, I don't get the benefit of comps and points and stuff like that. There's things called a DNI list, meaning do not invite. Like, let this guy play, but don't give him any comps, and don't invite him to anything. And without the niceties, it's not worth it to me anymore.
Oh, okay. Um, wow. Next question. And this is here's from Bruce Stern. There's only one wizard. That guy is amazing. That's a pretty great comment. Um,
Thank you for the compliment.
yeah, it's your site is awesome, by the way. I mean, you know this already, but it's such a wealth of information. I reference it constantly. I don't know, I've tried to like understand. I actually put up one of my videos, the calculation for house edge, and I was like, I don't understand how this works. But I looked at it like 6 times, like I think I understand it, and it's fantastic that you break it down the way that you do. We got to talk about dice control, because I know you don't believe that it's possible, but let's talk about it because I have one of my good friends, George from CY. He's he calls himself a controlled shooter or an experienced shooter. He doesn't believe in dice control either, but he practices it for thousands and thousands and thousands of rolls. What are your thoughts on it?
Okay, I wouldn't say that I don't believe in it, but I'm extremely skeptical about it. In the many years people have been talking about that, I've yet to see any convincing evidence that anybody can do it. Now, to that, people say, well, the people that really can do it are keeping a low profile, which is entirely
Mhm.
possible. But when I look at books and TV shows about people like the Dominator, I say, show me some log files, show me some tax returns, show me anything
Mm,
in writing that shows exactly, how you're doing over the long term. I don't want to just hear a lot of stories about the good days. I want to see some hard evidence. And I have thrown this out there for at least 10 years, and nobody has ever come to me and says, Mike, here's the evidence I can do this. So, and
right.
furthermore, it just seems kind of ridiculous to me. I mean, I once, when Stanford Wong and his companion Little Joe were out there claiming they could beat craps, I watched them once over about 50 throws, and those dice were tumbling all over the table. And I've also been out with Bo, what's his name, Bo Parker. And again,
Mhm.
to me, it seemed like the dice were just tumbling all over the table. I didn't see anything that looked especially precise. Now, again, I don't claim to have seen everybody, and so I will
Mhm.
say that, is it possible there's a small number of people out there who can do this and have a slight advantage? Yes, but I've yet to see the evidence.
Okay, so so I two follow-ups there. So the guy I was talking about, George, he wanted me to ask you this because he's willing to. He has logbooks. I'll give him all the he's logged. Not enough. He admits it. Not enough numbers. He's got in a like handwritten, I think, book, and he's got some spreadsheets, about 30,000 rolls, which
Hmm.
probably not enough to make a statistical finding. I don't think it's enough rolls. You would probably agree with that. But he asked me to ask you, what would you want to see? Like
Okay.
what kind of logging should he do and present? Because I think he wants to open up the conversation. And what he says, I take him at his word here, is I can't control the dice. He said I can control everything until they hit the table. Like how I hold them, how I
Hmm.
throw them. When they hit the table, it's in God's hands. He's like, I hope I set them up for success, is the way he describes it. And he says, I have a lot of success. I'm exceeding what you should see probability wise. And he's like, there's things that I feel like I'm doing that are setting them up. But he agrees too, the slow motion is a nightmare, as you have seen too. So
Okay, well, to that, I would start by saying that anyone can claim that they only control the dice until the moment they leave your hands, and then it's up to chance what happens after that.
Hmm.
So, but so even the best dice influencers, I'm sure, would say that they are not successful 100% of the time. And on Stanford Wong's old site, you heard a lot of people talking about their sevens to rolls ratio,
Hmm.
and you would expect in a random game that 1 out of 6 rolls would be a seven. And the dice influencers are trying to avoid that seven, and they would say, "Well, I've gotten it down to one in 6.5 or 6.7, or maybe even 1 in 7." So
Hmm.
you saw this statistic a lot. So as to the gentleman with 30,000 rolls, I would say that let's start by showing me how many times in those 30,000, how many times did you roll a seven? That's a great way to get started. I can very easily do a test to show how likely that outcome is. And here's a question for you. With the dice influencers, if it's a come out roll and they've got no old bets on the table, are they
Hmm.
trying to roll a seven? Or can you answer that?
Everybody's different. George doesn't. I know he does not try to roll the sevens. He looks at the come out roll as a practice roll. The way he describes it is,
Mm-hmm.
if my mechanics are bad, if I'm not feeling right, I'll use that roll to fix it, because if I roll a seven, it doesn't hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
But he uses it as kind of just mechanical practice.
Mm-hmm.
So if it happens, it happens. Some people target it. I know he doesn't.
Okay. Well, I would say that if the gentleman with the 30,000 rolls, if some of them are come out rolls where shall we say, they don't count, then just don't tell me those rolls.
Hmm.
And if somebody is trying to roll a seven, that data should not be mixed in with the data where he's not trying to roll a seven. So just make it
Right.
clear. Here's the data for when I'm trying to roll a seven. Here's the data when I'm not trying to avoid a seven, and here's the data where I don't care. And I'll take it from there.
Okay. Do you think it's relevant at all if a person who's setting, let's say, finds
Mm-hmm.
themselves with a certain set in a cluster of outcomes? Is there a way to give you data that would provide relevance on that, or is that really just happenstance in your mind?
Um, I will say that I know dice setters will talk a lot about what set they use, like the V set. I don't
Hmm.
remember all the other ones. And if, what I could do is, if someone were to send me some data, like here's set number one, and here's set number two, and here's my results, I could do what's called a chi-squared test to compare them to each other or compare them to expectations and see if there's a significant difference. Um, but I think a good way to start is just looking at how often you roll a seven.
Okay. How much data do you need to make it right? Like, or to get a really good, like, comfortable look at it?
Yeah, there's no magic number, but I think I would like to see at least 10,000 rolls. But I can work with anything, but the degree of confidence is proportional to the square root of the number of rolls.
Okay. He said he's got like almost 30,000 rolls logged, but I don't know that he's got them, excuse me, logged with the set used or the target he was trying to achieve or whatever.
Yeah,
So
well, neither
I'll,
do I. But
yeah.
um, let's just start with we can start with as little as how many of those 30,000 were sevens.
Hmm.
We can break it down. If he knows the actual outcome of every single roll, then let's see that. Here's how many twos, here's how many threes, etc.
Sure. And he's totally transparent and wide open. He's not wearing a mask and trying to hide from a casino. He's literally filming himself twice a day for 2 hours doing his
Yeah,
practice. So it'll be a legit set of data from him. I trust his whatever he's logging. I trust it. Um,
yeah, yeah. By
does
the
it
way, this is a good time if you like wearing a mask in a casino.
Oh, right.
It's
This is
good
the
time. It's a good time for card counters.
oh, I bet. Yeah, I bet. And poker players, right? You can just lower the hat, put the sunglasses on, and you know, nobody can see
Yep,
anything. It's like
absolutely. But that knife cuts the other way, as you can't see as much of your
that's true.
opponents.
That's true. That's true. Um, on the dice setting thing, so number of sevens is important, obviously. If a person is getting, I don't know how you can say it, demonstrably longer rolls, like if they're averaging Like out of, let's say, out of 10 shooters, let's say, if 6 of them are going 10 plus and 4
Mm-hmm.
are going, 4 minus,
Mm-hmm.
that breaks the expectation of 8.5. And I actually say it's less than 8.5. I always say 8.5 is like the number of rolls between sevens typically, but not counting the come out rolls. But if you're getting that kind of thing, does that matter to you? Do you think that that's relevant at all when we see a higher proportion of longer rolls, even though the total number of 7 ratio might be the same? You're still getting sevens when they come, but you're
Okay.
getting these like long stretches in between them.
Okay. If I understand the correct question correctly, first, 8.5 is the number of times the average shooter will throw the dice before he sevens
Right.
out. So the number of rolls between sevens should be fives. Should be five, not counting the
Mm,
sevens themselves.
right.
And if you're asking, I'll just say this. I'm not sure if it answers your question, but I'm not big on betting according to how other players are rolling. I know that it's fun to bet on the hot shooter, and that's when the whole table gets excited.
Yep.
And if that's why you're playing for that contact high with the other players, then by all means go ahead and do that. But I believe that a roll is a roll, and it doesn't matter who's making it. So I'm going to probably bet the same way on a stone cold shooter as a really hot one.
Regardless. Okay. Somebody's asking me to ask you, what about guys like Dominic Larigio who have been banned from casinos? Is that story true?
Is that the same guy as the Dominator, the one
Yeah, he's
Frank
the
Scoletti's
dominator. Was
friend?
he actually banned, or was he
I really
some?
don't know.
Yeah.
Um, I've got some of Frank Scoletti's books, and I think I've seen a thing about him on Beating Vegas or one of these shows, but
Hmm.
I have never met the man, so I can't really speak to that.
Okay. I've heard that some of these guys who claim to have been banned for their great dice control have been banned for their attitudes and how they act
Yeah, to
less
be
than
honest,
you know.
I would probably agree with that. I know a lot of people that work in casinos, and their attitude is, as long as it's a fair roll, as long as you don't take forever to roll the dice, come
Hmm.
on in and play. We welcome your action. And but I know this is a small sample size, but I do
Hmm.
know one person who's a big believer in dice influence, and he at least had his own table and practiced a lot, but he was said to be a very obnoxious and rude player and got banned
Hmm.
at some places, because he was so disruptive to the game.
Sure. Is the casino's biggest beef time? I mean, I've always figured that it's the biggest beef is like rolls per hour. You start affecting that, and you start not hitting the back wall. Then they start getting
Yeah,
antsy.
yeah, no, I know dice dealers, and they find people that take forever to roll the dice because they're very carefully setting them and gripping
Hmm.
them just the right way, and before they throw. They hate
Right.
that. So yeah, they find that very annoying. So that's why some places, like I noticed this rule in Aruba all over the place. They just said when it's your turn to shoot, you just pick up the dice and throw. So that's what they like to see. And I know it's not
Right.
what dice influencers like, but
Sure. One of the things this is my personal thing, and I don't. I'm going to ask you if there's a math way to answer the question. I don't know if there is. So this is a purely. I have no idea. I'm a believer. I think that if you throw the dice and you can control how many times they roll off the back wall, you
mhm.
can eliminate some of the possible 36 combinations. Like in other words, if the dice hit the back wall and only like 2 faces ever show up on one die and 3 on the other die, because they rolled so lightly off the back, you've eliminated like 7 of the faces or whatever. Does that change the probability of a 7 coming out
Oh,
to the
sure.
positive or negative? And how do you apply math to that, knowing that I can't tell you which of the 5 faces will ever show? Only
Hmm.
that 5 will, and 7 will not.
Okay, I'm not the best person to speak on dice influence about the fine points of it, but it's my
Mhm.
understanding that what they are trying to achieve is to keep the dice on axis. And so
Mhm.
whatever. Do I have some dice here? Yeah, let me get a couple dice real quick.
Go for it.
Um, So, okay, so let's say you're doing this V set. The idea being that when the dice are in the air and hopefully after they hit, they're going to stay on this axis and they're not going to land on the two sides. This is supposed to be a one, by the way. And what's
Mhm.
in here? It's like as if these dice are glued together. And if you're successful at doing that, you're not going to see any ones or sixes. So between the two, three, four, and five, even if these randomly um, move apart from each other, you're going to see way less sevens. So that's my understanding of what they believe.
Mhm.
Um, so if you can keep these on axis, even when they hit the back roll, if this one, shall we say, double pitches, which is I think what they call it, you're
Yep.
still going to get way less sevens. And I don't, it's possible that I know they try to put backspin on it, and maybe some are successful.
Mhm.
So that's about as far as I can take that. And again, I want to emphasize that I'm not saying that dice influence is impossible. I just have yet to see anyone make a convincing case
Yeah.
that they could do it.
And I've looked at a lot of slow mo on this, and the dice are never on axis, right? And what George will tell you, and a lot of folks that I know that practice this stuff, they say it's not on axis when it hits the back wall. It's on axis in the air, and the double pitch
Mm-hmm.
happens as they're flying, and the explosions happen as they're flying, not after the hit. And they
Mm-hmm.
say, well, if you can keep them kind of cool in the air when they hit, you've given them a good chance. If you have low energy and you're controlling that part, I don't know. Slow motion to me shows me every single face is visible to the top. Like I
Mm-hmm.
always say, if a face shows this to the ceiling, it's a possible landing spot. And if all six
Mm-hmm.
faces on both dice showed to the ceiling at any point in time, you had a chance for a seven
Mm-hmm.
of all the chances for sevens. And I'm hoping that, hey, if I can maybe make them not do that, I can eliminate a couple of them.
Right.
So
I
yeah.
think that is what dice influencers say. And you said before that we have control up until the time they leave your hands. But I think dice influencers will say, I think I have control all the way to the point where they hit the back end.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some randomness. But if I have low energy, as you put it, then I still can influence the chances enough to have an advantage in the game. And again,
Right.
I'm just playing the devil's advocate here.
Oh, totally. And I think, and honestly, and again, the math on this is interesting because if you could do it and you could hold the seven off to five out of, instead of seven out or six out of, or, one less,
Mm-hmm.
how much advantage do you actually get from that? Like you had a chart on your site, I think, that kind of shows you what the expectations would be. And it was interesting, but it wasn't like eye popping. I didn't think that there was that much there. There's some there, but is it, 100 hours a week worth of practice there?
Yeah, I do recall that I wrote about this a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
How far from 1 in 6 do you need to get that ratio? Like, is 1 in 6.5 enough? Is it 6.4? It's
Mm-hmm.
somewhere around there. I mean, the house advantage is kind of thin, especially when you put in the odds bets. So you don't need to influence it that much to get the advantage. But off the top of my head, I don't remember.
Yeah, and if I don't know, when I look at that stuff, I feel like, yeah, you get that little tiny edge, but it's one extra roll or two extra rolls during a point cycle.
Hmm.
That's not Is that enough to make it, I don't know, worth all the time? I guess that's has always been my question about it. Like I try it myself, and it's like, is it are you going to get that much money out of it? Like that, at the end of the day, it runs into how many more bets will you win if you can do it?
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And it's like, I don't know if that's actually a thing worth chasing. And that's what I was looking at your chart going, is it a thing worth chasing to reduce the house edge by a little bit, you know, in a
Yeah,
monetary standpoint?
yeah, the player would have to ask, why am I doing this? And I think a lot of them are kind of hobbyists that just love craps, and they would probably correctly say that if I'm going to play, I may as well it's better to have an advantage than a house advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe maybe it's not technically worth my time, but I enjoy it. So I would
Mm,
respect that. Like I know with card counting, there's a whole bunch of just recreational card counters that may have plenty of money but still bet red chips, and it's just because they enjoy the challenge of beating the
mm.
casino,
Yep.
and they like the game, and it's like like let's say we're playing chess. There's no money in it for that unless we're gambling, but you just enjoy the game. And I totally respect the pursuit of being good at something.
That's where I land, frankly. I'm pursuing it for fun. I don't know that I can actually make a difference. But to me, it's like if there's a reason to try, why I might as well try. That's kind of how I look at that. So cool. All right, let's Brian, this is a betting question. Actually, Brian, and this goes beyond craps. This would be for, I guess, sports betting as well. What's your opinion on hedging?
I'm against hedging, especially in craps because the hedge bets like the any 7 and the yo are terrible bets. They carry a house advantage up to 17%.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, absolutely no hedging in craps. In other games, it may not be so bad if the hedge bet is doesn't carry such a big house advantage. But in general, I like to say if you're out there gambling, then just gamble. And I have
Mm.
a good situation is, let's say somebody makes a 6 leg parlay bet and they're one away from hitting the whole thing. Should they hedge? And let's say they're going up against a 4.5% house advantage. If they hedge, I would ask them: Is life changing amounts of money are life changing amounts of money involved here? And they usually
Mm-hmm.
say no. I would win $2,000. I would say no. I would go for the whole thing. I would not hedge and go for it. The only time I would make an exception is if life changing amounts of money were involved. Like, let's say it was a 12 leg parlay and you're one game away from winning $1 million. That for most people, that would be a life changing amounts of money. And I might consider hedging there. So,
Interesting.
yep,
Okay.
that's about as far as I can take that one.
No, that's good. That's good. We talk about this a lot on my channel actually. Like when you're a don't pass player in craps, when do you hedge that flat
I
don't
would
bet?
say never.
You say never.
Just
Hmm.
right. You are there in the casino to play, so just play. And like I said, the hedge bets and craps are awful. If it's on the 7 or the 11, any hot
Hmm.
bet, and
Sure.
yeah. So just play.
Interesting. I've always given the advice of like not life changing, but I say if it's going to hurt to lose that bet, like when you
Hmm.
get your don't pass bet up to like 100 or 150 or $200, like that's going to really impact my bankroll.
Hmm.
There's a decision point where you go, I have to get out of here. I have to hedge that thing. Or maybe you would say you shouldn't have that much out there in the first place. If it's going to be life
Absolutely. You
changing,
shouldn't be
that's the
betting
answer.
that much in the first place, where if one roll is going to hurt.
Hmm. What about these hybrids? So a big trend we're seeing in traps is hybrid strategies where you get, you know, $50 on the don't, and then you bet 44 inside. So you're basically playing both sides, right? And you're hoping that, you can win a little bit and sort of, one bet pays for the other bets kind of a thing until at some point you're even.
I think that's a really bad strategy because you're facing the house advantage both ways, and a lot of your action is canceling out. I would view that as like betting on the black and red at the same time in roulette. Um, the action cancels each other out, but you can't win anything. You can only lose. So I would say
Mhm.
pick a side and stick with it.
See, in roulette though, it's a one roll thing, right? You bet them both, you lose them, you're always going to be hedged, right? And in craps, if you bet a don't and some inside numbers, and you take 3 or 4 hits on the inside and pull it all down, the don't saved you or it kept you safe while you were in there. You would say just pick a side and go.
The only time I would hedge in craps is if you're playing for comps, and
Mm,
that can be a good way to lower your variance and
okay.
and make it to seem like you're a bigger better. But yeah, but if comps are not important to you, then I would absolutely say stick with the side and be loyal to
Yeah.
it. Don't bet the other way. I think that it's just like giving the casino free money.
Interesting. Yeah. It's funny. I have One of my subscribers name's PJ. He preaches to me all day long. Pick a side, and you're just
Yeah, I would agree with him.
yeah, he's doing backflips at his house right now. I can tell you that. That's pretty funny. Yeah. So another question coming in is, how you feel about? So he's saying the same thing: lay bets to protect a don't pass. So a one-time lay bet. So lay $200 lay forward to protect $100 don't pass for one roll. Pull the lay bet down, like a short-term hedge. That's not going to be a guaranteed loss.
So with the lay bet, those matter whether or not the commission.
Mm-hmm.
So when you make a lay bet, say on the 4 or the 10, is it usually that you have to prepay the commission, or is it only on a win?
It
You
depends on the
tell me.
casino. We're at the Fremont in Vegas, you prepay the commission. If you pull the bet down, you get your commission back.
Yeah. I don't recall the house advantage on that off the top of my head, but I believe it's one of the lower ones. But if the house advantage is higher than whatever you're trying to protect, I would not hedge.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean it's funny because I would have expected you to say the exact opposite of that. Like use the math against the game for a minute and then take your stronger bet. But you're saying just go,
Just go.
just go, just go, baby. All right, that's great. Um, when you see your opinion on, I don't know what this even means, but Ken Green's asking me for your opinion on Grafstein's pensioners play, the bet that don't, and then two don't comes per roller. That sounds like what you were talking about before. That's your
Yeah.
preferred way to go, right?
Yeah, as long as he's laying the odds, I would say that's a good strategy. And it doesn't matter exactly how many come bets you make. You can fly by the seat of your pants with that one.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm always preaching just make pass, don't pass, come, don't come, and lay the odds. And however you do that is up to you. There, you can have free will.
Okay. We play a strategy a lot where we do a don't pass bet followed by three come bets. And you're getting a little bit of action on the 7 for 3 rolls, basically. So the early rolls, you're kind of safe. Then you get three do bets and a little bit of seven love on the don't. How do you think about a
Right.
strategy like that?
Well, I know I said to pick with a side and stick with it,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not going to criticize that strategy because at least at least you're making good bets. And I will say that um, that that lowers the volatility a lot. So if you don't like volatility, that would be a good thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I also view it like I gave the comparison before about roulette, that if you have bets that are opposite, they that to some degree they cancel each other out, and you're just you know giving the casino money without even getting any action for it. So why would
Right.
you do that? But some people want to do that. Depends on the
And
reason for playing.
are you a proponent of come bets versus place bets? Come bets with odds or
Oh,
don't come with odds?
absolutely.
Really? Okay.
I just before this show, I was reviewing my email, and somebody made a big old long argument that place bets are better than the combination of come and laying the odds, and that person is wrong. But I think I'll make an ask the wizard question out of it and
Mm-hmm.
show why it's wrong. But say the place bets on the 6 and the 8 have a 1.52% house advantage, where if it's a 3, 4, 5 times odds table, then the combination between, say, the pass and the odds has a house advantage of what is it, like 0.35%? I don't remember off the top of my head, but that's well below the 1.52% um, with placing the 6 or the 8.
So if you take this idea of, and that's a question I've written down here for you, is the house edge betting style like that you're talking about. When everybody says the come bet with odds, pass with odds, don't pass with odds, best house edge.
Mm-hmm.
But the likelihood of hitting it twice for the come better, you're fighting pretty hard for that, right? Where a place better says, well, all I have to do is hit it once and I can pull my money back, right? If you say $12
Um,
six, take your money and run, versus a come
you
better
know,
has to hit it 2 times. How do you come back at, like, what's the counter argument to that? Because I'm sure that the person who emailed you wrote that in there. That's always the argument, right? You got to hit it twice.
I'm not real big on people who argue that I only have to achieve one thing instead of two things your way. Um, I'm very mathematical, and no
Hmm.
matter what way you play, I can analyze it, and I can show you how much you can expect to lose per roll. And if you're making high house edge bets, you're going to pay for that. And it doesn't matter the reason that you make them or how you combine them together, whatever your strategy is, it all comes down to bet selection. And the reason for the bet should have nothing to do with it.
I'm looking forward to that Ask the Wizard article on this because it's a pretty hot topic, and you get people that say, all the experts write the books, that says come bet with odds is the best thing you can do. And
Hmm.
casino people write the books because they want you to bet that way because it's terrible, and then so they're place bet with pressing, proponents, and all the math
Hmm.
people say the exact opposite. And I just, you know, I love a come bet. I do that all the time. My most of my strategies have a come bet proponent component to them because
Right.
I believe in that. I believe that there's I get more gains from them than anything else. Now I don't do max odds. Can't afford, typically to go 10x odds in most places, but I
Hmm.
live in that world, and the counter argument's hard because they are right. I get to the six, they've been paid on the six. They can pull their bet
Hmm.
down and they're ahead of me,
Hmm.
and that's hard to come back to.
Right. Well, I have some videos where I try to explain and debunk betting systems. And the way I do it is I simulate it. And I can also run it through Excel and show you that if you are saying playing double zero roulette, that no matter what your betting system is, you're going to be facing you're going to lose 5.26% of your money over the long run.
Hmm.
And the way I analyze any casino game is if you're making a combination of bets, I analyze each bet individually and then average them all together according to how much money you're betting on each one of them. And there's your house advantage. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's how I analyze any given betting strategy.
So 000 roulette, you loving that?
Ew. No, I
Harris.
can't believe the players play that.
Oh my
Now,
God, Harris has a sign that says a new way to win. Have you seen that?
oh
When I
really?
was in yeah, when
Do
I
you
was in
know if that
Vegas,
sign is out there now?
yes, it's out there now. A new way to
Really?
win.
Because I'm going to the strip later today, and
Yeah,
I'm gonna. Do you know where the sign is? Because I'd
it
love to
was.
get a picture of it, and I'd love to see it, take a picture of it, and then shame Harris for that.
I
Do
don't
you know
remember
if
where
it's like on their marquee or
it
something?
was. Either on the walking up on the strip. I know I saw it in the magazine too.
Right. I do know that somebody in my forum said that in like a on a website of one of the casinos here in Vegas, they claimed that 000 roulette was good because it gave you another way to win.
It's the worst.
But they changed the wording on that to take it down because
Right.
they got embarrassed
Hmm.
by the fact that it was how shall I put it? It was deceiving.
Way
And
deceiving.
and
Yeah.
and people that write promotional stuff for casinos are not mathematical. And but
Right.
yeah, I will definitely I'll go down there later
You find
today
that.
and
Yeah.
I'll look for this, and
Mhm.
I'll definitely take them to task. And
Yeah.
like I remember that when 6 to 5 Blackjack first came out, Bally's had on their big marquee, and I saw this. It said our Blackjacks pay a whopping 6 to 5. And I thought that was just terrible.
Unbelievable.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's true they paid 6 to 5, but to throw in that word whopping, I
People see the
it's
big
not a
number and
lie, but it's just
yeah.
deceiving.
Yeah. Well,
And I
people
think they're taking advantage of people that can't that don't know which is greater, 3 divided by 2 or 6 divided by 5. Oh, 6 divided by 5 is bigger because the numbers are bigger. Mm.
that's insane. Well, it's like I say this all the time. Casinos do nothing for you, right? So like I'm a big anti crapless craps player. Or I've been speaking out about that because again, they change the game in a way that benefits them. They
Hmm.
take half the game away, and how
Right.
do you feel about that?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, the house advantage in on the pass in crapless craps I think is about 3% off the top of my head. So
mhm,
that's twice as bad as the 1.4% in regular craps. So
yeah.
um, Yeah, crapless craps is definitely a worse game. So given the choice, I would recommend definitely regular craps.
100%. Well, there's like I said, there's no don't. You know, getting a point of a 3 or a point of a 2. What
Well,
could
you
be
have
worse
to do
than
the
that?
math, and the math is the math, and it shows the house advantage is definitely about twice that in regular craps. And I
Mhm.
don't like trying to explain why in plain simple English. You have to show the numbers.
Right. Yeah, and then they'll never obviously do that. So,
hmm
cool. All right. Well, that's where we're about out of time.
Oh
What
wow.
what what thoughts do you have? Final thoughts. We're talking to a bunch of craps nerds over here, so
Well, let me say thank you very much for having me.
mhm.
I have said everything that I wanted to convey to you about playing a mathematical game and sticking to the low house edge bets. It doesn't matter the reason why you're making a bet. Just make the best bets. It's all about bet selection. I've conveyed my skepticism about dice control. So you've
Mhm.
really given me a chance to get everything I wanted to say off my chest. And
That's great.
I can't think of anything else to add, to be honest with you.
All right. Well, it was awesome to talk to you. I'm like honored that you gave us time at all. 7 in the morning, even like more amazing. That's you're a star.
Well, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me. It was no sacrifice in terms of the hour. I tend to get up early anyway.
Well, you added a ton to the conversation here for sure. I mean, it's just and a air of legitimacy to everything, right? That's the thing is like you come at it from a whole different perspective than us. Just hey, let's try this thing out. It's like I love the fact based basis. So awesome, and people
Yeah,
are just
thanks again for
running.
having me.
Oh, of course,
And
people
thank you for
are
all
in
the
the chat.
compliments.
Just yeah, people in the chat are just praising you right now. It's great to have you. It's been an honor to talk to you.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Appreciate your comments and enjoy the rest of your Craps Marathon.
Will do. Thank you so much, Michael. Bye
Okay.
bye.
Bye.